This government is really full of mischief. Just a few hours after sending DCI officers who are in a foreign number plate vehicle to invade the home of Uhuru's first son in Karen, now they have come up with a cover-up. And it is something that is pegged in the law that you cannot, if you're not very careful, you cannot really identify the mischief in it. I sympathize with the man who is executing all these things. My very good friend Kithure Kindiki, a professor of law. This man should have been the Attorney General in this country and not the Minister or CS in the Ministry of Interior Services. Uhuru Kenyatta received a phone call from his son that some people claiming to be DCI wanted to invade the house, and he told the son, close that door, I'm coming. So when he arrived, the so-called DCI flew. This is what Kithure Kindiki is saying, an explanation. Kithure Kindiki is saying that this is the Republic of Kenya, Ministry of Interior and National Administration. I'll only read what is pertinent for this discussion. It's a long memo there. He says that for immediate release, Harambee House, and the date there, Security Intelligence Information has established that some of the weapons, including firearms and crude weapons which have been used to fuel violence during violent riots that have been experienced in the country in the past few weeks, are supplied by a wide network of civilian firearm holders and leaders of non-criminal gangs. These civilians' firearms and crude weapons are credibly suspected to have been used to harm law enforcement personnel and civilians alike during the violence that has been experienced recently. I want to move to number 5 because that is what is pertinent for us to consume. That today afternoon an operation has been going on targeting 3 homesteads within the Karen area where a total of 23 firearms, some of which are suspected to have been used in illegal activities, are kept. Number 6, today's operation is part of a broader operation targeting scores of firearm holders who are reasonably suspected to be availing firearms not only for purposes of supporting violent protest but also other illegal activities. According to Kithure Kindiki, he wants us to believe that in the last 3 days when Azimio had called for anti-government protest, that there were people, including specifically Uhuru's son, that donated their firearms to be used in the violent protest to kill innocent Kenyans and to kill law enforcement agencies. Be that as it may, there are few questions that Kithure Kindiki is not answering. A lie, even if you package it, you dress it in its Sunday best, will still remain a fallacy. Let's begin by asking a question. It is true that under the law, they have the authority to inspect. They can always go there and take the firearm and inspect and investigate whether it is being used properly. But then, Uhuru Kenyatta was explaining that these so-called DCI officers guise themselves in a foreign number plate. Maybe for security purposes that can be allowed, but the last time I checked, if they are coming for a genuine operation, then they should also be very honest and identify themselves. They didn't do that. Number 2, this country must not be turned into anarchy. There must be a search warrant or a warrant that allows them, from a court of justice, that allows them to get into someone's home. They didn't have a search warrant or whatever that gives them the green light to go into Uhuru's son's home. They just said that they are DCI officers. But then when Uhuru Kenyatta went there, they took off. Now, if you are acting under the law, then why do you flee when you realize that the former president is there? So those are the questions that really makes it difficult to believe and trust what Kithure Kindiki is saying. The second part of my reasoning and argument is this. We all know, because people are capturing the policemen operating under the guise of cameramen. In fact, this time round they changed the tact. They would mingle with those who are demonstrating. I remember in particular that man who was arrested when he was saying that his son had been tear gassed and the son was tear gassed. So there's this policeman who pretended to be part of them and pounced on him like a lion, pouncing on a prey. And we saw several police officers, we want to believe they are the police officers, killing innocent Kenyans. Raila Odinga and the Azimio fraternity had told us that there is a squad, a special squad called Operation Support Squad that has been established specifically to deal with the demonstrators. Can't Kithure Kindiki tell us first where those who are killing innocent Kenyans got their firearms? Because honestly, they were together with the police. They were killing innocent Kenyans and targeting a particular ethnic group. So for them to come here and start telling us that they're investigating certain civilians, I don't want to buy this. Number three, we know that they have said, this is a narrative from the Kenya Kwanza team, that Uhuru Kenyatta is the financier of the demonstrations. And so when they link Uhuru's son with this, they want the whole world to believe that Uhuru's family is just a bunch of criminals. Because how do you suspect Uhuru's son to be part of a cartel, according to them, that is fueling demonstrations? This is maligning Uhuru's name, because you know very well that Uhuru is still busy. He is now an international figure. He was in Congo trying to negotiate for peace and tranquility in that nation. He was in fact, he headed the African Union in Nigeria during the elections, presidential elections. So Uhuru Kenyatta is being watched internationally. They're looking for something to malign his name. But one question that one would ask, don't we know why people are on the streets? Let's say that someone is sponsoring the demonstrations, but why do we give the common man a reason to go to the streets in the first place? Why do you hike prices of basic commodities? Why do you have this appetite to tax every sector? Why do you add VAT, value-added tax, on fuel, knowing very well that if you add value-added tax on fuel products, then everything will go up? And the other question that one would ask, William Ruto allowed Kenyans during the public participation to air their views on the Finance Bill 2023, and they spoke on one accord that they didn't want it, but he ignored the people. People expected that Parliament would help them and stand with them, but through the Speaker Moses Wetangula, there was another foul play and mischief, and this Finance Bill passed. It forced Kenyans to go to the streets because that is the only option that they have. The bill that was taken to court by Okeya Mutata is one that I can't trust the judiciary, because the way things are happening, the judiciary is still listening so much to the executive. So why does William Ruto gives people a reason to go to the streets? Because if there were no taxes, if he listened to the people, then maybe, let's just say maybe, if there is anyone sponsoring these demonstrations, then they will not have a reason to. You must have people a reason to go to the streets. That is the only way those who are financing it will only finance if people have a reason to go to the streets. But let's face it, people are hungry. There is unemployment. The cost of living is just too high. The cost of electricity, the cost of school fees. And to make it even worse, adding salt to injury, is the fact that we know that these are the dictates of the international community, the IMF and the World Bank. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I think the way the government is trying to justify their raid on Uhuru's son's home is not acceptable. If they were genuine people, they would have waited for Uhuru, explain to them what they want. Let us build one nation. We need peace. We only have one Kenya. This idea of bragging and chest thumping as if you own Kenya does not augur well. We all belong to this nation. And God in his own wisdom decided to place us here together. No one has more shares than the other.